Good morning, students. I, Purnima, welcome you to my class of English. I'm going to continue with the lesson A Time of Surgery. Tricky is a small dog, is pampered and overfed by a rich mistress, Mrs. Pamphry. He fell he falls seriously ill and his mistress consulted a veterinary surgeon. Now, what does the doctor do? This is there in the story. The most wonderful thing in the story is that the doctor, he did not do any operation. He did not give him any medicine, and the dog, the pet became all right. So James Alfred Wright, he is a James Harriet. Okay, he was a famous English veterinary surgeon. This is a true story which he has written and shared by us. Definitely, generally he used to share the story which used to be true. So I would like to tell you something about the main points, and then we will continue with the lesson. Okay. Now, one day the mistress called the doctor as he was vomiting and he was not able to get up also. The doctor, when he saw the condition of Tricky, he was really worried. Tricky had become very fat. So first reason, doctor understood that he had become very fat, and many a time the things were given to him. So it was a case of ill digestion. In fact, he looked a bloated like a sausage. His eyes were red and rheumy. What is the meaning of rheumy? I told you in my previous video. Rheumy means watery eyes. Mrs. Pamphry, who was the mistress of the dog, she has given him malt and cod liver oil and a bowl of Horlicks every night, but nothing works. Now, James Harriet advises Mrs. Pamphry that just because of the greed for the food of Tricky, this thing has happened, and he advises Mrs. Pumphrey that she must cut Tricky food, otherwise the condition will grow worse. She must give the dog some exercise. She must keep him on a very strict diet, otherwise he will fall ill. Tricky falls ill. Within a few days, Dr. Harriet receives a call from Mrs. Pumphrey. She tells him that Tricky had fallen ill. He doesn't eat anything and he is vomiting. He only lies down on the rug painting. The doctor advises her that Tricky needs to be hospitalized for a fortnight. He is to be kept under observation. Tricky is at the hospital now. Now Tricky is at the hospital. At the surgery, the household dog searches around Tricky, but he sees them lying motionless. A bed for Tricky is made in a warm, loose box. For 2 days, no food is given to him, but plenty of water only. On the second day, he starts taking some interest in his surrounding. On the third day, he begins to whimper when he hears a dog in the yard. Tricky starts taking a walk around the bowls, licking casually inside one or two of them. Rapid progress. Tricky progress is rapid. He has no medical treatment of any kind. He runs about the dogs, joining their friendly barking. He starts fighting for his share of food and hunts rat at night. Dr. Harriet tells Mrs. Pumphrey that Tricky is not in danger and recovering rapidly. Mrs. Pumphrey starts bringing eggs, 2 dozen at a time, to build up his strength. Wine and brandy are given to improve Tricky's constitution. The doctor informed that Tricky has recovered and Mrs. Pumphrey can collect him. Grateful Mrs. Pumphrey, within 2 weeks, Tricky has been transformed into a flexible, um, hard-muscled animal. He is playing, he is behaving like a normal dog. When Tricky sees his mistress, he leaps and sails into her lap. He's very happy. As the car moves, Mrs. Pumphrey leans out of the window. Her lips trembles and tears shines in her eyes. She says, "Oh, Mr. Harriet, how can I ever thank you? This is a triumph of surgery." Okay, so these were the main points of the story, and now I am going to read the rest of the story, and we will do the explanation part of the story. So now we have completed page 1, page 2, and now we are here at page 3. So I'm going to read the story. Okay. uh, at the surgery, now I already told you all this important thing. He was brought to the surgery, and at the surgery the household dogs searched around me. All the household dogs searched around him. Tricky looked down at the noisy pack with dull eyes, and when put down lay motionless on the carpet. So he lay motionless on the carpet. The other dogs, after sniffing around him for a few seconds, decided he was an uninteresting object and ignored him. So, children, when other dogs were playing, they were barking, he was simply looking at those dogs. He was simply looking at those dogs, and he was lying motionless on the carpet. The other dogs, after sniffing around him for a few seconds, decided he was an uninteresting object and he was ignored. I made up a bed for him in a warm, loose box next to the one where the other dogs slept. Now, children, the doctor, he had made bed for him where the other dogs were sleeping. Okay, it was a cardboard box, and his bed was made there. And at the end of the second day, he started to show some interest in his surrounding. Now, children, second day he behaved like a normal dog. He started looking at the surrounding, and on the third day he began to whimper when he heard the dogs in the yard. When I opened the door, Tricky trotted out and was immediately engulfed by Joe. So when he opened the door, he trotted out, and trotted out means moved out. Trotted out means moved out. And was immediately engulfed. Immediately means at once, engulfed means surrounded by. So he was engulfed by Joe, the greyhound, and his friend. So there was one other dog. The name of that dog was Joe and his friends. And after rolling him over and thoroughly inspecting him, the dogs moved off down the garden. Tricky followed them, rolling slightly with his surplus fat. So the other dog came, they judged him, they sniffed him. Okay, greyhound was there. It was a hunting dog. He started checking him, he started inspecting him, and finally when he was not able to move, they left him. They started moving off toward the garden, and Tricky started following them. That means Tricky Now it started behaving like a normal dog. Uh, with his surplus fat, though he was so fat that he started moving. Later that day, I was present at feeding time. I watched while Tristan slopped and food into the bowl. Now, children, um, now when the food used to be given to Tricky, doctor used to stand there and he used to tell how much food should be given to him. And a person was named. His name was Tristal. When he used to slop. Okay, slopped means spilled the food. The doctor used to be there. There was a usual headlong rush followed by the sound of high speed eating. Every dog knew that if he fell behind the others, he was liable to have some competition for the last part of his meal. Liable is likely to. So now we come here to page number 6. When they had finished, Tricky took a walk around the shining bowls, licking casually inside one or two of them. Next day, an extra bowl was put out for him. So next day, there used to be extra a bowl for him, and I was pleased to see him jostling his way towards it. Jostling is pulling. Jostling is pulling. So he used to, when they had finished, Tricky took a walk around the shining ball. Now, children, when they used to finish, what Tricky used to do, he used to take a walk around the shining balls, licking casually inside one or two of them. And children, whatever remains were left, Tricky used to eat it. Next day, an extra bowl was put out for him and was pleased to see him jostling his way towards it. So, what is the meaning of jostling? Pulling. From then on, his progress was rapid. He had no medical treatment of any kind, but all day he ran about with the dogs, joining in their friendly scrimmages. Scrimmages are fight. So next day, now children, Tricky became more normal. The dog who was not able to get up, now he started fighting. He started scrimmages with other dog. So this was there was a lot of improvement in his condition. He discovered the joy of being bowled over. So he discovered what a nice thing, what a friendly thing is that when all the dogs they used to children he used to bowled over. Okay, with the other dogs. Um, Ringing a dozen times a day for the latest bulletins, I dodged the question about whether his cushions were being turned regularly or his correct coat worn according to the weather. But I was able to tell her that the little fellow was out of danger and convulsing rapidly. Uh, convulsing rapidly. Convulsing is recovering. What is the meaning of convulsing? Convey, convey, sing. So he was convincing, that means he started recovering fast. So he started recovering fast, and the writer was happy that he was playing with the other dogs. Um, from then his progress was rapid. So now he was doing rapid progress, fast progress. He had no medical treatment of any kind, but all day he ran about with the dogs, joining in them friendly scrimmages. He discovered the joy of being bowled over, trumped on, and squashed every few minutes. He became an accepted member of the gang, an unlikely, silky little object among the shaggy crew. Fighting like a tiger for his share at meal times and hunting rats in the old hen house at night. He had never had such a wonderful time in his life. So now, children, he started behaving like a normal dog, and he had a very wonderful time in his life. All the while, Mrs. Pumphrey hovered anxiously in his background, ringing a dozen times a day for the latest bulletins. And at the same time, Mrs. Pumphrey, she used to ring continuously. Howard is hung over. And she used to ring the doctor to hear about the latest bulletin. I dodged the question about whether his cushions were being turned regularly or his correct coat worn according to the weather. I dodged the question about whether his cushions were being turned regularly or his correct coat worn according to the weather, but I was able to tell her that the little fellow was out of danger and convincing rapidly. So doctor told that he was convincing, he was recovering rapidly, avoiding her question, and that was more than good news to her. The word convincing seemed to do something to Mrs. Pumphrey. She started to bring round fresh egg. Now, the moment she has heard the word convulsing, that means recovering, she was very happy, and she started to bring around fresh eggs, 2 dozen at a time, to build in Tricky's strength. For a happy period, my partners and I had 2 eggs each for breakfast. Now, children, the doctor, he never used to give egg to Tricky because he knew that the situation will again become worse when he will started eating egg. So he and his friend, they used to have two. She used to give them 2 dozen egg, and he and his friend, what they used to do, they used to eat 2 dozen, two eggs each. They used to have. So for a happy period, my partners and I had 2 eggs each for breakfast. But when the bottle of wine began to arrive, the real possibilities of the situation began to dawn on the household. Now, the best part was that when children, the bottle of wine, it came. Okay, dawn here means realize, begin to be understood. Okay, and it was to interest Ticky's blood. Lunch became a ceremonial occasion with 2 glasses of wine before and several during the meal. So they used to have that good wine. It was like a ceremonial occasion. That means time for some celebration. She used to give them good wine. Instead of giving that to Ricky, the doctor and his partner, they used to have all that thing. So now, children, we are here at page number 5. We could hardly believe it when the brandy came to put a final edge of Tricky constitution. Constitution is badly body structure. So we could hardly believe it when the brandy came to put a final edge on Tricky's constitution. For a few nights, the fine spirit was rolled around, inhaled, and reverently drunk. So he was given reverently is respectfully. So we could hardly believe it when the brandy came in and put a final edge when in Tricky's constitution. Constitution is body structure. For a few nights, the fine spirit was rolled round, inhaled, and reverently drunk. Reverently is respectfully. He drank a bit wine. Okay, he first inhaled and then. They were days of deep content. Content is satisfaction. Starting well with the extra egg in the morning, and children improved and sustained by the midday wine, and finishing luxuriously round the fire with the brandy. So children, those were the days of deep content. They used to start well with the extra egg in the morning, improved and sustained by the midday wine, and finishing luxuriously round the fire with the brandy. It was a temptation to keep Tricky on as a permanent guest. Now, children, all the wine and drink, it was taken by the doctor and his staff. So they felt that he should be kept permanently. But new Mrs. Pumphrey was suffering, and after a fortnight felt compelled to phone and tell her that the little dog had recovered and was awaiting collection. Now, children, after a fortnight, after 15 days, finally the dog recovered, and the doctor, Mr. Harriet, he rang her and he told that now you have awaited a lot and now it is a time to collect your dog. Within minutes, about 30 feet of gleaming black metal drew up outside the surgery. And when Mrs. Pumphrey, she heard that, after a few minutes, 30 feet of gleaming black metal. What is this 30 feet of gleaming black metal? Is the car of Mrs. Pumphrey. It came outside the surgery. The chauffeur opened the door. Chauffeur is driver. And I could just take out the figure of Mrs. Pumphrey, almost lost in the interior. Her hands were tightly clasped in front of her. Now he saw Mrs. Pumphrey. She was excited. Her hands were clasped in front of her. Her lips trembled. Oh, Mr. Harriet, do tell me the truth. Is he really better? Now she was not able to believe. She started calling again and again Mr. Harriet and started telling that, is he really better? Yes, he is fine. There's no need for you to get out of the car. I will go and fetch him. Now the doctor told her, no need for you to come out from the car. I will go and fetch the dog. And I walked through the house into the garden. He walked through the house into the garden. A mass of dogs was hurting round and round the lawn. There were so many dogs were there who were hurting round and round. They were moving round and round. I'm here at page number 5. Now we could hardly believe it when the brandy came to put. Now children, now the dog was ill and so many things were coming. Okay, Tricky for it. We could hardly believe it when the brandy came to put a final age of Tricky constitution. Constitution is body structure. What is the meaning of constitution? Body structure. So children, for a few nights, the fine spirit was rolled round, inhaled, and reverently drunk. Inhaled is breath in, reverently is respectfully. So finally, children, it was very nicely drunk by everybody in the vet hospital, by the veterinary doctor and his friends. They were days of deep content, starting well with the extra egg in the morning. And children, whatever Mrs. Pomfrey, she used to give like 2 dozen of extra eggs. So it was shared in the morning by everybody there. They were days of deep content, starting well with the extra egg in the morning, improved and sustained by the midday wine, and finishing luxuriously round the fire with the brandy. So brandy, wine, extra eggs, everybody awards. It was shared by everybody. Well, it was a temptation to keep Tricky on as a permanent guest. So children, everybody wanted to keep Tricky as a permanent guest. Okay. Mm. So they were days of deep content. These people, they were days of deep content was their content is satisfaction. Is starting well with the extra egg in the morning, improved and sustained by the midday wine, and finished luxuriously round the fire with the brandy. It was a temptation to keep Tricky on as a permanent guest. So everybody wanted to keep Tricky as a permanent guest, but I knew Mrs. Pumphrey was suffering, and after a fortnight felt compelled to phone and tell her that the little dog had recovered and was awaiting collection. So doctor and the whole staff was enjoying with whatever Mrs. Pumphrey was, she sent to them, like extra eggs, wine, brandy, and nobody wanted that he should go, because due to him they were having a nice wine, brandy, and extra eggs. But doctor knew that Mrs. Pumphrey would be suffering a lot. It was a temptation to keep Tricky on as a permanent guest. But I knew Mrs. Pumphrey was suffering, and after a fortnight felt compelled to phone and tell her that the little dog had recovered and was awaiting collection. Within minutes, about 30 feet of gleaming black metal drew up outside the surgery. After children, when he rang, black metal, that what is the meaning of a gleaming 30 feet of gleaming black metal? 30 feet of gleaming black metal means a car has arrived, and you can guess whose car was that. It was Mrs. Pumphrey car. It came and stood outside the surgery. The chauffeur opened the door. What is the meaning of chauffeur? Chauffeur is the driver. He opened the door, and I could just make out the figure of Mrs. Pumphrey, almost lost in the interior. Now the writer was able to make out the figure of Mrs. Pumphrey, almost lost in the interior. Her hands were tightly clasped in front of her. Her lips trembled. "Oh, Mr. Harriet, do tell me the truth. Is he really better?" "Yes, he is fine. There is no need for you to get out of the car. I will go and fetch him." I walked through the house into the garden. A mass of dogs was hurtling around and round the lawn, and their midst, ear flapping, tail waving, was a little golden figure of Rigby. Now, children, when the doctor went into the garden, he was very much happy that the dog behaved in a very nice manner. Okay, a mass of dogs was hurtling around. So a mass of dogs were there. They were hurtling. Hurtling means they were running fast here and there. They were moving here and there. Okay. Their ear flapping, tail waving, and the little golden figure of Tricky can be seen. In 2 weeks, he had been transferred into a little hard muscle animal. So he had been transferred into a little hard muscle animal. He was keeping up well with the pack. stretching out in great bounds, his chest almost brushing the ground. I carried him back the passage to the front of the house. The chauffeur was still holding the car open. Now turned the doctor hold him. The chauffeur was still there in the passage, and when Tricky saw mistress, he took off from my arms in a tremendous leap and sailed into Mrs. Pumphrey's lap. Now when the dog saw this, he was so happy. He was so happy that he he ran from the arms in a tremendous leap. Leap is jump. Okay, what is the meaning of leap? The meaning of leap is jump. And he went into the lap of Mrs. Pumphrey. She gave a startled "oh" and then had to defend herself as he swarmed over her. Now he swarmed over her, he jumped over her and started licking her face and barking. During the excitement, I helped the chauffeur to bring out the bed doors. Now they were so excited, lost in each other, that Mrs. Pumphrey don't know. She was lost in her dog. In the meantime, doctor told chauffeur to bring out the bed, toys, cushions, coat and bowls, none of which had been used, though it was not used at all. As the car moved away, Mrs. Pomfrey leaned out of the window, tears shone in her eyes. Her lips trembled, her lips were trembling. "Oh, Mr. Harriet," she cried, "how can I ever thank you? This is the triumph of surgery." So she told that this is the triumph of surgery. So with this, children, I end my she thanked the doctor and calls his feat a triumph of surgery. Triumph means a victory. Okay, finally the veterinarian doctor, he had won. He was able to cure, and his dog was behaving like a normal dog. So finally she told a triumph of surgery. With this, I end my video here. Thank you and have a nice day ahead.